Take about 30 seconds. All right. All right. And good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Stuart Creek. I'm a marketing manager here at Simplilearn, and I'd like to welcome you to our career masterclass. Secrets of successfully navigating potential career pitfalls. Our guest speaker today is Lieutenant Colonel Prem Vas. He's the CEO of PreHanJay Ventures and a noted career coach. And before I introduce Prem, I'd like to remind everyone WebEx controls to put in questions for Prem to answer in the Q&A. Please put those in the Q&A function. Those will go into a list that we will ask Prem towards the end of the session. You can put in chat messages to the panelists if you wish, but do try to put your questions into the Q&A. And we'll also be doing polls of you, the audience, and I'm going to start with this one just as a test. And this poll question we've been asking people since the beginning of the pandemic. If you're watching on live stream, you can put an answer into the chat window or the comments. But this is a pretty simple question. How are you feeling today? We've been asking this through the pandemic to get a gauge of how people are holding up with wildly changing directives and regulations and outbreaks and lockdowns. So about 10 more seconds. And it's good to see that 2/3 of you are doing well and about a fifth of you are doing okay. And for the folks who are not doing so well, we hope that this webinar will give you some useful tools to brighten your outlook for your career in 2022. So let me introduce Prem. Lieutenant Colonel Prem Vas. He's the CEO and co-founder of PreHanJay Ventures. He is a business and life coach with credentials from the ISCP in Singapore and more than 3 decades of professional career, both in the Indian Armed Forces and in corporate. And welcome, Prem. I'm going to turn over the presentation to you.
Thank you so much, Stuart. Hi, everyone. So the picture that you see is without my beard. So I have grown this beard during the pandemic. So that's a slight change. So let me now go to the event proper. I will share the screen. Just a minute.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, if somebody could confirm if you're able to see my screen, it'll be great.
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. Okay. So the topic that we are going to deal with today is secrets of successfully navigating potential career pitfalls. Now, Stuart and I, when we discussed this earlier, we chose this topic because we we felt that this is something that a lot of us had to go through during the pandemic. And therefore, let's see how we can handle this. Career pitfalls has always been there, but how to handle this is something that some of us figured out on our own, and a lot of us were trying to do our best. So I have decided to get all of that put together with my 3 decades of experience that I've got. And plus, I did a survey so that I get the feel of the ground, I get the pulse, and therefore, we will share all of that in this presentation, right? Okay, so let's go with the audience poll. The first poll that I want to check is which country are you attending from this session? And this, and the second one is your work experience, less than 2 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and more than 10 years.
And we'll close the poll in about 3 seconds.
Oh, great.
And here's the poll results for, you should be seeing the experience poll. And I'll see if I can get the information for the
Country. Okay. So here we have an experience which talks of predominantly more than 10 years is the 38%. And yes, so you would definitely have an experience of the pitfalls. Let's check that out. The next poll would probably ask that question. And less than 2 years, we have 30%. That's wonderful. Okay. Yeah. And for the 3 to 5 years and 5 to 10 years, yes, you will have a lot of lessons to pick up in this session. And I hope it will be definitely of use to you. Right. Can we go to the next one?
yes.
Yes, 1 second. Yeah, so we go to the next poll, which talks of the number of career pitfalls if you have experienced till date. None, 1, 2 to 3, or more than 3.
By the way, the response to country, about 50% of our audience today is from India.
Oh, okay, great.
And we have countries from all over the globe represented, from North America through Asia, Africa,
Oh, great.
and Europe. Tahir Naheem asks, what is a career pitfall? Hold on for just a second.
Oh, that's very interesting. So we have Maxim who says they've not faced it. Damn good. I hope you stay lucky this way. And yes, one, we have roughly about 21%, and between 2 to 3 career pitfalls is about 31%. And that's where it's the highest. And more than 3, we have about 14%. So it's kind of spread all across. Fine, perfect. So let's go to the next one. Which, just 1 second, let me just go to the next poll. The next poll talks about what, according to you, are the most common reasons for career pitfalls, right? A, B, C, D, E, and F. Expectation mismatch. You did not upskill, not putting your best effort, a difficult boss, life compulsions, and lack of better prospects.
About 10 seconds left.
Yeah, this is something which I would be very interesting result of this.
Here's the results.
There, I mean, that goes as what I thought. 52% did not upskill myself. Yes. And then the next one comes to 39, which is expectation mismatch between, yes, what has been offered and what has been the reality. And then we have the next highest one is lack of better prospects, which is closely followed by a difficult boss, right? And external life issues, yes, those are those ones. Fantastic. Okay, so this is in lines of what we had predicted, and we will take on this presentation forward, and it's more or less stitched to what you have expressed in these polls. Okay, and that's great. So let me just go to the next one. Okay, so now what to expect from the session. So when we talked about pitfalls, so pitfalls is something, like dictionary words, if you're going by that, it is something, an unsuspecting danger or something which is unexpected. So that is what is pitfall, and you stitch that to the carrier. So we're talking about carrier pitfalls. Now, there are two aspects to this carrier pitfall. So one is the predictability. The other one is, of course, I mean, it just came out of the blue, right? But more often than not, it is the predictability which applies to the pitfalls. So I thought I must just make that clear as to what is that we are looking at when we are talking about as pitfalls. So the predictability, if we have chosen not to ignore the warning signs, then of course we really don't know how it and why it hit us, right? But more often than not, you will find that there is a writing on the wall somewhere. So what to expect from the session? Firstly, I will talk about the survey that I did because I want to know what across the globe what people think about this particular topic. So I will share that, and then we will talk about top 10 career expectations because everything starts with the expectation. If your expectations are there, you have to see how close it is to the reality. That's one of the reasons that leads to a career pitfall. So we will check out what are the topmost career expectations. I got a whole lot of them. I just picked up the top 10. And then the reasons for the career pitfalls, right? We will take a look at that and the top carrier pivots that goes to happen thereafter. So pivots is something which we take a conscious decision to shift maybe more than 180 or 270 or 360 degrees sometimes. We will need to do that. So that pivot, what is it? We will take a look at some of them. And this came from you, those who have done the surveys from the LinkedIn as well as in my WhatsApp and my social media when I shared the survey. And then handling carrier pitfalls. This is what we are now going to talk about, the essence of what we have picked up from all the 3 or 4 topics that we are going to expect from the session. And then the tools and the techniques that we can use to deal with the carrier pitfalls. And finally, 10 carrier best practices. This is from the experience, plus some of you were shared, spoken to people, and we will list them out. There could be more than this, but these could be, if you try them out, perhaps you would not need to, come into a career pitfall. And then how can I be of help? I'm a coach, so therefore I do help people to come out of the career pitfalls. And how do I do that? I will explain in that. And then we wind up with the question answer session. Right now, let's talk about this survey that I did. Most of you have said that career pitfalls are inevitable, and quite rightly so, because there is a huge amount of unpredictability there, and we've seen this live in the past 1.5 2 years when the pandemic hit across planet Earth, and we realize that the pitfalls are therefore inevitable. And if it is inevitable, what are we expected to do about it? That's what we are going to discuss in this session. Right. So when we did the survey, you would like to know who are the people who participated. So roughly 22 professions have participated. So it's a wide base that we've got. The HR, ITS, IT and ITES, and the armed forces, the veterans, they're the maximum who had, uh, done the survey, and the rest of it is there. These are all more than 5 or 10 people who have attempted the survey. So I've put those professions out here. There are 22 of them. So we have a fairly wide coverage of people who would be facing the career pitfalls, right? So from that, and from the experience that I have spoken to people, met so many of them, we I have listed out 10 top career expectations. The first one invariably is reasonable work-life balance, and everybody will agree to this. I mean, this is what we are all looking for. And the second one in terms of priority was aligning your career to your passion and interest. Interestingly, there was an article today in LinkedIn, which talks about that it's not passion that makes you happy when you look for a job. And you must go read that. And they say that passion is okay, but how most of the people there said that learn how to love your job. And that is how keeps you going. And passion is something which need not to be connected to your job. Very interesting reading. I'm not saying that we need to agree to that, but it's good to read that. Then we have compensation, which is equivalent to the industry best. That is the expectation that we have. And then the compensation, which is above average. The expectation is more than average. We want better than the others. So that's a human requirement. So that is the fourth one in priority of career expectations. And the fifth one is very clear career progression. If you have a clear career progression, you feel that you know where you're going, and that is one of the important expectations which came from many. And then comes the career stability till you retire. So we're not talking about what is the retirement, because everyone has their own idea of retirement, and plus the work compulsions also gives you what should be the retirement. So it's in terms of somebody wants to work till 30, somebody wants to work till 40, 45, 60, or somebody, as long as the steam is on, they would like to keep working on. So that is an end part of it. But at least till the time that they retire, they would like career stability, and that is one of the expectations. Location preference. This is predominantly with the ones who have started their families. So they have a commitment. They want to be near the best schools, a city which provides good education for their kids, and those kind of things. The younger ones, the freshers, and people up to 5, 10, or those who are not married or staying single, they're okay with any location. A good boss to work with. Surprisingly, this I was expecting to be one of the top reasons is the career expectations, because in 2019, there was a survey which was done by the DDI, and that was a consultancy firm, and they said that 50% employees leave because of bad boss. They can't handle the boss. 50%, 57%, sorry. And of this 57%, 43% have left their company at least once because of a bad boss. And 14% have left multiple times because of bad boss, right? So that makes it 57. But what is even more interesting is 32% of them felt that they should leave because of a bad boss, but they didn't do that. They didn't resign, right? So that's close to 69, 70% of people using this as a reason to avoid a career pitfall, right? So that is something interesting that I thought I must share. And then a hybrid workplace. This obviously, thanks to the pandemic, um, Association of Chambers of Commerce, ACC, OC, CHAM, they have mentioned in a study, this took place in October 2021, and in that they said that by 2024, 17% of increase will be the gig workers, and the gig workers predominantly are working on their own. And in this hybrid workplace, because of what they have observed till now, they say that 26 hours per month is the increased productivity during this hybrid workplace. And for the employer too, it's very good because that much of increased productivity. Now, this is just an overall statistic. It may vary from companies to company. Another important thing which they also said was that this the hybrid workplace is something which has benefited the employer more than the employee because of cutting down of the overheads. Okay, so that is something which is very interesting. And then the gig opportunities. This is something which phenomenally went up 17% in by 2024. You can expect, that's what the study says, 17% of them, and that totals up to US dollars 455 billion. That is the kind of money that's going into the gig opportunities. And a lot of people have upskilled themselves during this pandemic and have chosen gig opportunity, and it's going to pick up, and that's where it's going to. So hybrid and gig right now it's 10 with the expectations. Let's say if you do the same session, maybe after 2 years from now, this would go up in the career expectations. Now let's take a look at what were the career pitfalls, the reasons for this. And the top 10 reasons are they did not upscale. And we have seen that, in the poll that we did too, the upskill was the highest percentage that we had, 58%, I think, or 38%, yes. Not putting the best effort. You know that you can do the best, but you just, okay, I just worked for the pay that I got. That's it. That was the attitude. And when it came to laying off people, these were the ones who got hit. Okay. And then the third reason and the topmost reason was underestimating your potential to upskill. You know you had a potential, but you just didn't. You took things for granted. So that was one of the third top reason for the career pitfall. And life compulsions. This is more or less not controllable one in the sense that they had no choice but to use life compulsions because of health, because of the pandemic, how it badly affected us, the finances, and of course, the job opportunities. And this and the family, of course, all of this is forming the life compulsions that we're talking of. And yeah, this is staying in comfort zone. All of us like the comfort zone, but the guys who moved out of the comfort zone were the ones that stayed on, were more stable. So this is something similar to the point two, which is just not putting the best effort. And then you got stuck in your career quicksand. Let's say you are a teacher, for instance, and you don't want to change, or you didn't want to change because you just did your graduation, you specialized in teaching, and you don't want to change, although you may have a requirement or you may feel a need that I should have been somewhere else, right? So that is a career quicksand, and you get fixated to the one. Or let's say, for instance, if you joined the armed forces, at least to the time that you have signed up for, you got to be there. So that's a career quicksand. So that's something that is also a reason for the career pitfalls that you have, because if you're not doing well and you can't come out of it because of that career quicksand you're talking of. Complacency. Yeah. So we just start taking things for granted. Okay, everything is going good, so nothing is going to happen to me. And that's a very serious problem. And that's actually the one which surprised a lot of people as to why suddenly things became difficult for them. Job hopping. Now, this is for in the survey, in the poll that we did, people who are 10 years and above would understand this much better, that anybody who job hops, let's say in 10 years, if you have job hopped 6 times, that means there is an area of concern. Why do you have to leave jobs 6 times? Is it because you're not able to cope up with the pressures? Is it because you're not able to cope up with the challenges of the job? These are the questions that comes to a mind of somebody. And if you have left a job and you're not picking up another job because of this reason, then it is a serious career pitfall, right? So avoid it. Roughly 2 to 3 years max is something that you have to do this kind of it's okay for you to be there, but anything less than that, unless you have very strong reasons, you should try and avoid job hopping. Overconfidence or being self-absorbed because of, we may be coming from a very good institute. We did our graduation and MBA from top institutes, and we feel that we are now cat's whiskers. I mean, nobody can touch us. And that kind of a confidence leads to an arrogance. It reflects on your behavior, it reflects on your attitude, and this can lead to a career pitfall. So these are the reasons that we saw. And the 10th one is avoiding the writing on the wall. You have issues performance. You may not want to agree to it, right? You may have got warnings, you may have got indications of it, but you just ignored it, right? And when it came to layoff, you were among the ones that got picked up for this. So this is the 10th reason for career pitfall. There's so many other reasons, but these are the top ones which people have given in the survey. Okay, right. Then comes the top career pivots that you have to do, and what were the reasons for that. The first one is you found the job no longer exciting. Maximum of the survey mentioned this as a reason for the career pivot. You didn't find the job because, for whatever reasons, it could be you picked up the wrong job, it could be because somebody or some other compulsions beyond your control, or it could be surely that, I mean, it didn't excite you anymore. You want to change. Some people constantly seek change, so you may be part of that. So, whatever be the reasons, but this is the top reason for a career pivot. Then comes the inadequate compensation. You're not happy with what they pay you. You just took the job because you wanted the job. You had to pay your bills. You got to do your EMIs. You picked it up. But that inner frustration was simmering inside. Okay, so these were the reasons why you felt that you need to shift your job. Lack of career growth within the company. Now, this is legitimate. If there is no growth, obviously you would like to move on and work somewhere where there is growth. And companies, for some reasons, because of the structure that they are, the metrics that they are in the organization structure, they may not be able to give you an opportunity there. So that this is a reason for you to pivot out from, say, a large company to a startup because you get a low. Let's say if I've been a HR generalist in a large company, paid very handsomely, but I realized that if I need to move to a leadership role like a head of HR, then I need to go to a medium or a small industry, or I need to go to a startup, for instance. So that's reasons for your career pivots. Okay. And then lack of career growth within the industry. We've seen in the pandemic that there is the insurance, the banking, they all did extremely well, but the travel, the hotel industry, they actually bought it. It was very difficult for them to survive. So that clearly indicated there is a gap there. So people were doing jobs that is somebody in the hotel industry picked up a job that has got nothing to do with what they were doing so far. So that was the reasons for the career pivots that happened. And armed forces here, for instance, people who have done their 10 years, 20 years, 14 years, and all that, and they're going to go to another, they still got life left in them. That's one of the reasons, a legitimate reason for a career pivot. Opportunities abroad. Okay, that's something which comes up. The pandemic put some brakes on this, but still, a lot of people moved overseas to get themselves upskilled to the better universities there, and from there to the jobs that they could pick up from. And then you had the opportunities in the home country. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to get back to their roots, get back home. We've seen a lot of, for instance, a lot of movement from the UAE to back to India. Right? A lot of people who worked there for very many years, they moved back because opportunities at home country was there. And in fact, there was lesser opportunities there, and therefore they had to move. So that was also a reason. Now, this is the most serious one, wrong career choice. By virtue of a compulsion which came from perhaps our parents, from perhaps the society that we are, the culture that we were from, and we choose a career. And we realized that halfway through the career, some people who have gone to IITs, I believe 27 of them in the IITs put together in one particular year dropped out because they didn't want, they realized that that's not where they want to be. And it's a dream to be in IIT by many of the students. They aspire for it. So this is clearly a wrong career choice. Okay, and some have had to pay for this after about 3 years or 5 years, or maybe even between 5 to 10 years. They realize that they're wrong. They are in the wrong career. Now look at the amount of money that is being spent, the time that is spent. Because if you change your career at that stage, you have to restart. You will have to, your baseline is far below. So you're competing with somebody who is far younger to you in the career growth, right? It's okay about age, but I'm talking about career growth. So there, the repercussions are very, very heavy. So handling common career pitfalls, some of the ways that people they themselves choose to say is that Avoid taking career for granted, and that's really right. uh, let's not get the complacency mode set in. Let's not take things for granted. Oh, I'm in this country. I've been in this company. I know people there. I have been doing extremely well in my career. So therefore, in my studies, so therefore, I should be doing well. You're taking things for granted, and you did not upskill. Okay, so you might be okay with your graduation and all for a few years then, because the technology changes, because the new competitors have come, the companies have to move. Unless you keep pace with that change, you become redundant, right? So upskilling, you have to keep pace with the latest, right? We've seen in India, the government offices were always using files, and over a period of time, they don't even know what they've not even seen computers. Some of these employees, but today they're all working on computers. They're all networking, and so that's how the upskilling, how important it is. Having career goals. Now, just imagine if you're playing football. When you play football, just imagine somebody picked up the goal post and threw it away. I mean, how will you play? Because unless you have a goal in mind, you can't play the game. So you need to have your short term, which is about, say, 2 to 3 years in your career goals, a midterm, which could be anywhere between 5 to 10, and long term beyond that. Some people even say long term is anything beyond 5. And these are scales which are no hard and fast rules, but this is something that you must have in your mind, and this will keep changing. Be very dynamic about it, right? So you must have these goals so that you can remain focused. It helps you to stay focused, right? And you don't start taking things for granted. And this also helps in, you must be aware of complacency setting in. And when you have your goals and all of that in place, then you are conscious about it. Avoid designation skill days. Sometimes we say that parents tell us, okay, it'd be great if you become a manager of an IT company. So once you become a manager, you feel that you achieved the end. Okay, so there's also saying that you have arrived at your level of incompetence. You can't go beyond that. Now, don't get fixated because of that, because you will get a lot of opportunities to upskill, and the world is changing, and unless you understand that you need to change along with the world, it's going to be very difficult if you do get stagnated in one place, right? And you are likely to face a career pitfall because of that. Resolve vertical and horizontal flows. We are working with people, right? Machines is fine, okay? Maintenance can take care of machines, but when we work with human beings, right, there are bound to be conflicts which is likely to come up. We must know how to handle conflicts. When I say vertical conflicts, it means up the hierarchy and also people who are working for you. That's vertical. And horizontal conflicts are ones with your stakeholders, could be your peers, your colleagues, and somebody from the department, the neighboring department, and somebody you're working with, the operations working with the finance. So that's horizontal. So this is something that new to resolve, and these can lead to career pitfalls if you're not able to resolve in time. Sometimes the hard option you may have to take. If everything else failed, you certainly have to take a hard option. That's fine. But that should not be the norm. Behavioral corrections. This is something which comes to that part of knowledge, skill, attitude, the attitude portion of it. More often than not, we may not realize how our behavior is affecting others. How is it hurting people, right? In our ambition to do well, in the desire to meet the targets, meet the objectives, we may not realize how we come across as being extremely insensitive, right? So that is something which, if you get a feedback and people notice it, right? And if there is a reason for choosing between two people, the one who is better, I wouldn't say behaved, but one who's been able to handle the emotions better, the EQ is better, they're the ones who get that deal. So be conscious of this. If you get any inputs, make a conscious effort to correct it. All of us are human beings. We have our aberrations. So we must be conscious of that and do something to correct that. Now we will talk about the tools and the resources to handle the career pitfalls. There are umpteen number of them. You go to the internet, you will get a lot of them. But what I've attempted to do in this webinar is to make sure that I give you something very, very simple, something which all of us can do. I believe in my 34 years of career that if you keep your things simple, the solution's simple, right? It may have complex workings, which is fine. But if you have your broad way of working, if you keep that simple, you are tend to be more successful. So the tools that I'm going to share are very common. Most of you know about it. In case if you don't know, I will just touch upon it, right? So the first tool that will come to you is your career SWOT analysis, your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, right? I will go I'll take an example, a very simple example of how to do this, fine? And this is important. It helps us focus on what otherwise we are in a muddle. There's so many thoughts keep coming, so we need to get focused on that. Then there is something even more simpler, the T-chart analysis. Most of you know this. I will also show you in examples how it's being done, right? Because we have a lot of younger crowd with us, so for them it would be a learning, right? And then of course, where we are totally confused, we're not sure where we are, we will be we'll be wondering what is it that is. Then we need to take help. We need to be scientific about it. We have to use the psychometric test. The fallout about psychometric tests is that you have to be really honest if you really want the test to be the way that you answer the questions. You have to be genuine about it. Otherwise, the answers to psychometric test can be skewed, and you will take a wrong decision based on that results. And psychometric test has to be done by somebody who's competent. You can't just download a psychometric test from the internet and attempt it and predict how you could go to an expert, somebody who's qualified. Let them do the test in case you feel that you need to understand what is the area that you need to refocus, re-career yourself. Career counselors, yes, once suppose you know that, what are the options, right? You may not be able to figure that out. A career counselor definitely is a person who can give you the options, and then that helps you make your decision. And then the lastly is a career coach. Today, I believe, and the world has picked this up very much, especially in the pandemic, the coaching is a profession to be. Most, or rather all of, I would say, I can take the liberty of saying that most successful people, right from your Jeff Bezos to Bill Gates and everybody, they all have coaches. Is it because they're incompetent? Is it because they don't know what to do? It's not that. The coach is a one who is an independent and a person whom you can use as a sounding board for your what you want to take forward, what the future is thinking, or what you're going through in life. You may not want to discuss with your spouse, you may not want to discuss with your boss, but a coach is a person who is confidential, whom you can trust and you can take. And this is a very positive way of going across. I'm a coach, and I've realized in the past 1.5 years how people have benefited because of coaching. And I don't give solutions. People take the decisions, but a coach helps you to take the decision. So make use of this fifth one. When you are addressing a career pitfall, make use of a career coach. It's worth every dime that you pay the career coach. Okay, so we will take a look at what is this career SWOT analysis, just for those who are uninitiated. S stands for strength, W for weakness, and threats and the opportunity. So what we do is that we list out what are the strengths that we have picked up in this just before we are going to get into a career analysis, right? We pick up our strength, we list them out. Then we take a look at a very, very hard look at our weaknesses. All of us have weaknesses. Let's not, uh, cheat ourselves. We all have weaknesses. Sometimes we might get to know what our weaknesses from the others. Be open about it. Take positive criticism. List out your weaknesses, which is preventing you from walking towards that career pitfall. Then, what are the threats? The threats, more often than not, are external threats. The industry problem, the company going through a tough phase. These are the threats that is perhaps taking you towards the career pitfall. Fine. And then, based on this weakness and threats, we list out what are the opportunities that we have to come out of it. Right. So, what are the steps that we need to do? What are the action plan that we need to do? Right. So, that is a process that we need to follow this. Okay. Now, I will give you a typical example. I've made it very simple. Okay, so don't go by why is this so simple. I'm just made it simple so that a lot of us can understand. I just glanced at one of the questions somebody asked, but so let's take a quick example, right? A typical example. So let's take, like I told you, let's list out what are strengths, fine. So we found that, we are good at communication skills and we have a domain experience. If you're good at accounts or if you're good at dealing with people, you're good at analytics, that is something which is good. And your supportive team, you have a good supportive team. That's definitely a strength that you have in the current company that you're working. A stable work-life balance, you have it. And you have a reputation in the company. These are the strengths that you have. Just as an example for you to list it out, let's take 5 of that. Now let's go see what could be the possible weaknesses that we have in this example. Lack of analytical skills. We're not very good at maths. We've ignored or we get somebody else to do it. We want to stay within our comfort zone, like go to office, come back, do the work, go back. That's it. Nothing more, nothing in anything. We don't want to raise our own bar. And then we depend on the team for any technical help because we don't want to learn the technology. We are being stagnating. So these are the weaknesses that you realized. Okay. Then let's see what are the threats. We knew that in our past few appraisals that we've dropped a performance by 50 percentile. And we are in the 50 percentile in the team that we are working, right? We've not worked in the areas of improvement. People told us, boss told us, but we just ignored it. And then change of management. There is acquisitions happening. Companies get bought by something. Merger and acquisitions happen. A bigger fish eats a smaller fish, and they have a better say than the smaller one. So a lot of people churn out during this particular time. So this is a serious, career pitfall that you will be addressing. But if you realize that what is your stakes in that well in time, then you can take your steps for that. And then, of course, this is MBA. We may have done our MBA 10, 15 years back, fine, but that's not relevant anymore because the world has changed extremely fast. We have moved in terms of technology fast in the way that the companies have evolved themselves over the time, the way the competition has come up, way that the world is moving forwards because of the threats, environmental threats. All of this makes you rethink because we got used to the way that we have been taking decisions. The management wants us to change that thought. They want us because they believed in us, we've been loyal to them, and so therefore we have some of our assets, some good things. But if we upscale now, and that is where we need to do an MBA, maybe 10 years, 15 years, or officers who are transiting, this is the time for them to do an MBA because they're going into corporate, entirely a different environment. There is a need for doing an MBA. And how do we do that is that EMBA, which is the executive MBA, because this is what it is. And today, when I did a lot of was it checking about what is more available in the market, the executive MBA is the in thing. It is trending very, very strongly today. Thanks to the pandemic, thanks to the requirement of upscaling the requirement, it is happening. Now we have listed out the weakness, we have listed out the threats. Now let's see what are the opportunities. How do you create opportunities out of this weakness and the threats? Okay, so let's take this. Upskilling, the online course. Let me see if I can get this. No, okay. No, error option. No, it's not coming up. Okay. The upskilling of online course on analytics and the latest software. Now, this is the weakness that you had. Your analytics skills, you lacked them, and you were depending on technical help. So, if you upskill on the online course for analytics and the latest software, you should be able to take care of these two. Staying in the comfort zone is something that you have to work on yourself. Okay, so that is something that you do it yourself. And then you see your performance is 55. Most companies, although some of the companies have got away with it, they still use bell curve for performance for the compensation. So if you are part of the bottom 50%, bottom 10, 20%, you are certainly a threat as far as your job is concerned. So you got to move out of that. For that, you have to be creative. You have to show that you have some initiatives. You did something different when you created the project, or whatever work that you're working. And that's how you do it. And this change, especially when there is a change of management, you have, because the new management do not know what you have done. You should have actually recorded your metrics. You could have documented your metrics. So that's very important, and that is why the last one, your performance metrics that I was talking of, that is where it's very important. Whatever you have achieved in terms of percentage, in terms of number of hours, maybe, or in terms of monitor in terms of how much money you saved or how much revenue you earned. All of that, if you could document over a period of time in your own way and make it useful during performance appraisals, that is going to stay in good stead for you, right? And lastly, if you're about 10, 15 and you feel that you need to, so please do an EMBA. It's very important. And the companies, there is very strong evidence of companies having paid 20, 30, 40% more because you have upskilled yourself because of an EMBA. Now, it depends from company to company, industry to industry, and of course, in what position you are. Okay. C-suite, if you're going to go there, you definitely have to be an MBA. Right? Okay, so then comes this T-chart. This is very simple, quite easy, quite easily done. Just divide your complete issues into pros and cons. So you have mentioned your pros out here, the work-life balance, timely promotions, incentives, your growth from a graduate engineer trainee to the manager, your domain experience, supportive team, IT park, and a hybrid working, right? These are the pros that you have currently before your when you visualized your pitfall. And the cons are like same examples that I gave you in the SWOT analysis: lack of analytical skills, work is not challenging anymore. And these were the reasons that what happens? 1 second, sorry. Okay, let the cat out of the bag. Sorry. Sorry about that. Oh, fine. So stagnated performance, lack of MBA for senior promotions, pandemic-related job insecurity, companies at loss, okay? And the commute distance is too far away, conflict with immediate boss, and the spouse relocation has happened. These are the cons. Now, how do you deal with this, right? So we'll pull the cat out of the bag again, right? So any issues that you have, and that's why I put the heading like handling personal and professional life situations. They're all the same, right? Any issues that you have, there are two aspects to it. You can break it down to two aspects. Simple as that, right? Now, a lot of people who are fond of complicated ways of looking at things will say, "Oh, this is. I mean, how can you be? How can you talk something like this?" Believe me, some of the solutions in world and the life is very simple. All you need to look for it and apply yourself. The first and foremost is that in all your situations, there are things that are controllable, that you can control. Perhaps you have not attempted it, but there are things that are controllable. And then there are things that is beyond your control. You can't do anything about it. It has hit you. Pandemic, for instance, right? It's not your doing, right? So if it is hit you, so this is not controllable. A combination of this is what your current situation is, right? So in the previous example where I've talked about the T scale, fine. In this, what we do, the pros we know, and in the cons, what we have done is that I've shown you in red. What I've shown you in red is the uncontrollable, or something that you can't control. I won't say uncontrollable, something that you can't control. Pandemic related job insecurity. I mean, this is not in your hands, really speaking. Company is in loss for the past 2 years. Fine. So if they are looking at a layoff, it's not your doing. Your spouse's relocation, because it's important, you need the money and you need to plan your finances. There is an EMI running, there's mortgage running. So if that's the case, then the spouse has to relocate for improving your finances. Now, these are all things that is beyond you. So this is not controllable. But what is in blue, they are all controllable. Lack of analytical skills, you can upskill. Work challenging, not anymore. You raise your bar, go to a different department, maybe even change your job. Make it more challenging. That's up to you. Depends on team for technical assistance. Once you are depending so heavily on them, you can move out of that and then you can do this. And then stagnated performance. This is something that is because of your own doing. Sometimes the company may not have any positions beyond what you're already there. Do you want to move out from there? Some of the government jobs, for instance, you have no scope. Till most of the time, you will be just having a very, very minimal amount of changes. Would you like to accept that, or is it something that is acceptable to you? Now, those are questions that you need to ask. So they are actually controllable with you. Lack of MBA for senior promotion. So you know that if you do an EMBA, you can handle this. Similarly, commute distance is too far. Move closer to the place, relocate, shift. So these are solutions that you have rather than commuting from tour. Maybe it's expensive. Is there some other way of handling that? These are questions that is controllable. Conflict with immediate boss. I'm putting this in the controllable. Most of the time, the conflict is on assumed perception. You have assumed a certain perception, your boss has got certain perception, they didn't match. And that's why there's an expectation. Or surely because of an attitude issues. Not your own attitude, the boss could be an attitude which you can't put up with. It's fine. Is there a way to work around it? If you can try that out, either speaking to the boss, and if you have tried out with speaking with colleagues, taking help of somebody else and all of that, and if it doesn't work out, which in some cases it will not, then certainly move on, right? But that's controllable, fine? So this is why I have said that these are the ways that how you handle this, fine? Okay, so these are the 10 career best practices from what we've discussed so far. Career decisions should be yours. Please don't go by opinions of others, especially people who are transiting from the armed forces, from the uniform to the civils. Please do your homework, ask pointed questions. Have a robust financial plan aligned to your career expectations, and that's very important. Unhappiness at work can lead to professional cancer. This is psychosomatic. If you're stressed, if you're you're not happy, basically, it's actually playing up on your body in the long run. And that's why I said it is psychosomatic. So you have to figure out what is that's making you happy. Should you need to change the location? Should you need to change the ambience in which you are? Go ahead and do it if that's making you happy, because that is the solution. Career versus life. Now, this is it's partly the home life, work life balance that you're talking of. You got to draw very clear lines between what is that you're going to dedicate for your career and what is it that is your life. Unless you dedicate, like if you want to be yourself, there is a me time that you have to be with you. You can't get up in the morning and be on the mobile phone throughout till the time you drop into your bed. That means you're being ruled by that device. You have to have it, because if you have a me time, if you have a time for yourself, you are spending it on a hobby, you are spending it, you are indirectly being more and more productive. It affects positively on your work. That is why this have to be very clear, and you have to make known to your people in your workplace, what is it that you will not compromise. Be very clear about it. Okay, and there are times when career should take over more than life. You must understand it and allow that much of priority for it. There are times when life takes more over career. Understand it and make yourself available for life. For that instance, somebody is seriously sick, right? Those kind of issues. Document your work. I already touched upon this. Evaluate and then discuss career aspirations with stakeholders. This is something which do we assume that, oh, boss knows what I'm doing. Please, you may have to remind your boss through the reports that you send every week, maybe every month or every quarter, what you're doing. Progress it there, document it, because when you do the appraisal, these things will come in handy. Networking. Today, this is the world for you. If you don't network, you are nobody. If you don't brand yourself, you're nobody. Whether you're starting your career or whether you're mid. In mid and beyond, definitely network is the one that is going to fetch you any opportunities. It is the one that's going to make you successful, networking, right? So make use of networking. LinkedIn is a platform that you must make it your spouse as far as your profession is concerned. It is that important. Unprofessional at work, I'm not going to elaborate much of that. You all know this, what it is. Avoid it. And lastly, don't build bridges. Yes, we may have our issues with people, but at least when you're leaving a company, please leave with a very good note, or at least make peace and leave. The reason I'm saying this is that the new company does a background verification check. Most companies do that, and especially at the senior level. And therefore, what happens is that if somebody reaches out to your boss, because you got to tell them who your previous boss was. And if you have lied to them in the interview, and if they check up and he gives or she gives a totally different story, your current job is at stake. So let's not burn bridges. Be careful, leave in a very good note, make it your effort, your initiative to leave in a good note. Okay. And finally, seek a mentor and a coach. I have already touched upon this. This is very important for your career practice. Have a coach, have a mentor. Very important, right? So this is how you reach out to me, and this is of course you can take a screenshot. This is my phone number. I'm on Telegram as well as WhatsApp. my email ID and my website. I have a website. You can access me through that. And I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And I have my own YouTube channel, which has got career enhancing YouTube recordings that is there. And please go and take a look at that. So if you're a shammer, you don't want to note all this, right? I have a QR code. You have, most of you must be having a smartphone. Take a QR shot of this, and this has got a digital visiting card of mine. All that you've have done is also available there. Fine. And now I go to the question and answer. Stuart, I'll seek your help in helping me go to the Q&A.
Sure. We have a number of questions that have come in, and we have Abhishek makes an interesting observation. Sometimes our family background creates our pitfalls. You comment on that a little?
Yeah. So, Abhishek, I just mentioned that, can I expand this? Oh, okay. This is it.
Would
Okay.
you, oh, shall I?
Yeah, correct.
If
You
you
can
stop,
put that. Yeah, correct.
if you stop sharing, then
Just 1 second.
I'll do that from this
Yeah,
side.
fine. Okay. So Abhishek had that question, right?
Hmm.
So, Abhishek, so your question was on if you have the compulsions, the family compulsions for you to in a career, you have to take a call and you make use of the SWOT analysis that we discussed. Put that there, and then if not, you can use the the pros and cons. Use that as a tool. List it out, and when you do this, do it by yourself. You can seek help from others to give you inputs, but you must do this essentially yourself and find out for yourself which is more important at that particular moment. Just remember one thing, Abhishek, that situations, whether it's work or whether it's life, whatever it is, they are all temporary. And how temporary is something that we can't really put our finger on, but they are temporary. So, therefore, what is it that is more important for you at that moment to take a decision? Is it leaning towards career? Is it leaning towards family compulsion that you have? That's a call only you can take it. Maybe you can seek a help of a coach to help you decide that, but that's a way out for you. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, I think that also addresses a question from Prabhu who asked about how you know the decision on your career is your own decision, and I think as you've described it, doing that uh, calculation on your own
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
helps you do that.
Yeah.
Um, we have several questions about job hopping, and we
Okay.
have some people who say that what's too much for job hopping, and then the other question is, what about people who stay with a company for 5 or 10 years and are accused of being stuck?
Okay. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, fine. So let's take the first one where job hopping. When do you say that you are job hopping, right? Um, a few years back, let's put about 10, 15 years back, working in a company or 20 years back, looking for a golden watch and all that was the thing. Okay. But in the last few, perhaps a decade, a little more than a decade, uh, you change your job every maybe 3 to 5 years. That's become the trend. The millennials are facing that. The Z generation are doing that. They don't stick around for more than 2 3 years and they go job. And the reasons are also not just because they want to hop the job. It's because the opportunities are that much more, and the industry is also expanded that much. And that's a reason why this is happening. So if you were asked what is a job opening, anything less than 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, if it is one or two, it's okay. But in a 10-year career, if you have moved 2 or 3 times in a 10-year career, it's okay. But if you moved more than 5 times, then seriously, it's a cause of concern. Definitely, people would like to know why you did it. Okay, and the behavioral for very very intelligent as well as very matured and qualified. What shall I say? Interviewer. He will be able to pick out through behavioral event interviewing questions how far are you saying the truth about it. So be careful about that because you must have very valid reasons. More often than not, we've just given up. of a particular situation. So that is answers that particular question. Now come to the second one where I mentioned about stagnation, right? In your job, where you've been stagnating in a job. Now, what happens is that over a period of 10, 15 years, if you're in a particular company, it's because that you have gone up from a GT to that particular position that you are there. Okay. Is there the question that you have to ask if you're already been there is that is it actually stagnation? You may have grown up within about two or three positions within the company when you came up to 10 years or 15 years. That is okay. Now, what you have to ask the question is, do I have more growth within the same company that now that I've been here for 10, 15 years? That's a question that you have to ask. If there is still opportunities for you there by upskilling, by perhaps doing an EMBA, a fresh, then of course you can still continue to be there. There's no harm in past rule that you should leave, okay, just because you did 10 or 15. It's more of what is your opportunity, what is the comfort level that you're looking at, or do you want to sign off after next 3 or 5 years by staying back in the company? So that's a call that you need to take. Yeah,
We
that's what I have to say on that.
have a couple of questions about gaps in the resume or job
Yeah.
gaps. We have Satya, who's had a couple of gaps due, a couple of years gap due to COVID. We have Jacob, who's had some job gaps regarding a disability that's gotten him fired, even though that's not legal. It
Okay.
still happened to him. So how do you deal with that
Okay.
as a pitfall?
Right. So in the past 1.5 years, ever since, okay, so since 2000, when the COVID started from 19, 20, 21, right? We all understand, everybody in the industry, as long as they are human beings, they understand that people have gone through COVID. If not them, at least their family or somebody near and dear to them have got affected, for which they had to suffer, a period of absence or whatever it is. Everybody understands that. What people are going to ask is that, for instance, because of COVID, I lost my job and I've not been doing anything, say, for 1 year. I'm just giving an example, right? In that 1 year, what did I do to upskill myself? Did I use it usefully or did I just sat home and put on weight? Did I learn a new skill? Did I upgrade myself in the existing domain that I'm already good at? If I have done something like that, then it's not a minus. It's not a disadvantage. Then people understand, yes, you lost a job, you didn't get another one, and that's why it is. Earlier, before the COVID, any gap beyond 6 months used to be a question that they would ask in the interview as to why is the gap of 6 months and more? Okay. But in this last 2, 3 years, that's really not a area of concern unless you have valid reasons. COVID is a valid reason. Now, talking about disability, it is a health hazard that you went through, right? It's something like maternity which people are going through. You have to be a mother for a certain number of months that you have, maybe 6 months, 8 months, or whatever it is. You may be off your work. Maybe at best you can do a little bit of work as work from home. That's all it is. But we need to understand. If you have people who do not understand this, it's not worth working for them. Clear, very clear.
Makes sense.
Don't work for them. Leave.
Good.
Look for another job. Leave. Anything else?
Jacob also asks, because he's, I believe he's enrolled in the Simplilearn data analytics course, and he has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering with a couple of years experience. So he's curious to know about that kind of a pivot. Is it reasonable for him to expect to be able to pivot from mechanical engineering into data analytics and come out with a good position?
Okay. So Jacob is the one who asked this question. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So Jacob, this is how it goes. You spent a lot of effort and time and everything to do mechanical engineering for whatever reasons. We're not discussing the reasons because that's past, right? Currently, there is a skill set with you based on that. The mechanical engineering and whatever that you've done so far will need analytics. Today, more than yesterday, today a lot of decisions are being taken based on analytics. That's why when I tell people who are moving out from career to a different career when they're doing the pivot, analytics is something that you must, it's part of your life. Now, any decision today, your boss is likely to ask you, why this decision? What's the reason to support it? What are your facts to support it? They're definitely going to ask because it's all a metric driven. That's good. Now, there may be certain decisions that has to be intuitive, okay, which you cannot ignore. Fine, but that intuition has to be based on some framework of a decision which is based on metrics. So that's also a part of rule. So when I'm talking like this, what I'm saying is that you cannot totally divorce your mechanical engineering from it. That is a skill set that you arrive. But while you need to explore, right? What are the areas of analytics that you need to specialize on? There are business analytics. Then there are something called scientific analytics, which you have to go. There are something software analytics that you have to be proficient on. There are software that you need to specialize on. You have to answer the question: where do you want to go? What are you comfortable with? What kind of job are you looking for? Maybe you could discuss that with a career counselor, or maybe you do a psychometric test if you're not sure where your strengths are and you're not able to pinpoint there. Do all of that, make use of that, and then maybe even speak to a coach. When you do all of this, you are actually using data, you're using information to make your decision. And as you get more and more information, believe me, you get more and more clarity in what you want to do. Currently sitting and trying to figure out what should I do puts you more and more into that confused state, right? And that happens to everybody. Even the most intelligent has to go through that. So therefore, it is nothing to do with how smart you are. It is more to do how practical are you, right? So Jacob, all the best on that. Choose what suits you, and I'm sure you will be able to have a combination skill, and it also widens your employability too. Remember, take it from that point of view and pitch your interview conversations that way as to why you did this to enhance an existing skill.
It's also important to remember that analytics is an applied field and it requires domain knowledge. So if you've got a background in mechanical engineering and you've got a lot of domain knowledge that you can apply in many industries with respect to mechanical aspects and understanding how to use analytics there. So that's a leg up on the
Yeah,
competition.
yeah,
Kelly
absolutely.
has a
Yeah.
Kelly has a quick question for you, Prem. She missed the statistic you mentioned about the benefits of hybrid working and the increase in productivity that it yields.
Oh, okay, I'll just repeat it for you. So this was a study done in October or November, I'm not very sure, and it was in 2001. And according to them, I think this was done by DDI consultants, correct? Yeah, DDI consultants had done this. These are global consultants. So they said that on an average, 26 hours was the additional productivity that an employee put because of the hybrid working. That was the statistic that I shared.
We had several questions regarding the EMBA. Couple of them have to do with age and whether there's a higher limit on the age of somebody before taking an EMBA, after which it would not be productive. And the other question is whether you prefer online or offline. Do you see a difference?
Okay, great question indeed. Wonderful. Now, in the EMBA, who asked this question, and I want to know which country is it from?
So most of the questions were asked by several people, one
Oh,
of
okay,
whom
fair
is,
enough. Okay, fine,
they
fine.
were all India, I think, Susan and Tahir and um,
Fair enough. That's okay.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not important, right? Most of the countries, okay, EMBA, like it's like executive MBA. Their basic qualification requirement is the number of experience that you put in, right? For instance, they would say that it could be 5 years, or it could be 10 years, or even the senior courses EMBA that you do, which they call it as the senior transformational leadership, and they have so many names that they have. Right? I'm not picking up institutes by name deliberately because I'm not promoting them, but they have these as the minimum qualifications, and you should have a basic degree. That's all they need. And they also say that your basic degree should be about 50%. You should have got your pass marks. This is essentially what is everywhere. And in case if you've not got this 50%, at least a certain number of increased years you may have. Let's say if they say it was only 2 years of experience, if you don't have 50% marks, they would say 5 years of experience. So that is all the QR that they are asking for. Fine. And then what they go through, and this is where the tough part is. What they go through is they go through an interview and they ask you to give you a statement of purpose, or maybe they ask you to write an essay as to why do you want to do the EMBA. They want to know your purpose. Is it just to do and get a qualification? Is it to enhance your career? Is it to enhance what you already learned? So those things come out in the interview before they select you. So that is currently what the status of EMBA is. Now the question of the age, they're not worried about age. I have never come across, because I did a lot of people approached me for career coaching, and when I have spoken to a number of top institutes, nowhere is there an upper limit. So that's not a criteria at all, an upper limit, right? As long as you're able to tell them why you want, maybe at 60 or 70, why do you need, if you're say, for instance, you may be having a family business, right? I'm just giving an example. And you want to continue, want to do better because youngsters are coming there and then you are not able to correlate with them. So you want to do an EMBA and you have the desire to study and you did that. So that's okay. So they are more concerned about why you want to do it. If you're able to convince them that, age is certainly not a factor.
Um, so we have some people who ask about making a pivot and how to position yourself if you don't have relevant experience in the new area. How do you position your skills as transferable?
Wonderful question. Okay. So this is, let's say I'll give an example with the veterans, for instance, the armed forces veterans, right? They've come in an environment where their leadership skills are the highest, right? Because I mean, the moment they step into the academy to the time that they leave, leadership is certain. They do a lot of things. Fine. Now they want to come to the corporate. Now that's a pivot for them, right? Now they do not know what happens in the corporate. How is the business there? How is the life there? So they need to understand that. So they have to undergo courses like this EMBA, for instance, or institutes who specialize in grooming the veterans to move there. I just talked about veterans now. So they have a case for doing the pivot there. So they can do that. And now what happens is that the the thing that you need to be very conscious there is that whether you're a veteran or whether you have done up a particular career and you want to pivot and go to entirely a different career, what you must understand is if I upskill myself, whatever I'm upskilling, how am I going to use that knowledge in the new environment that you're going to work? Obviously, you've not been there, but how are you going to apply it? How can you apply whatever that you have upskilled now? How can you apply it from the current work that you had? How are you able to relate? Because when you go for that interview, what they're trying to find out, they know that you're not there, you have not been there, but they know that you have upskilled yourself to be there. So they're trying to find out from you how good are you at creating that adaptability, because adaptability is intelligence of the highest order. How are you intelligently able to use that knowledge to that environment that they're coming? They're asking that. And they will ask you to relate it with the existing domain that you already worked for. Are you able to apply it? How did you apply it? If you're able to convince them that, they know that once you come across on this side of the field, you will certainly apply that thought process and you will be able to enhance yourself and work out. So this is more of how you're applying. So when you don't do certifications for the sake of certifications. Don't do a EMBA just because it will help you get X number of thousands of dollars just because you do that. That's not the point. The point is how are you going to enhance your operability? How are you going to enhance your job applicability? If you're able to convince there, then you are definitely there.
Okay.
Yes, Stuart.
Thank you. So I had a question here about gig workers and contract workers, and do you have advice for them?
Yes. So It's like I said that, the Association of Chambers of Commerce have done a study, and they have said that in 2024, 17% increase, and that's 455 million billion dollars, US dollars, right? And secondly, they also went to predict that in 2027 in USA, the number of gig workers is going to be more than the non-gig workers. That's how important gig workers and contract workers are. Now,
Hmm.
let me. Uh, I will speak about the contract workers, because contract is a document that is telling you that for a particular period of time you're going to work, and that's it. That appears to be a big disadvantage when you work under contract. But what is not also, people don't look at, is that the contract can be renewed, and for that you have to remain upskilled. Okay. So, the question that we had, where somebody said, a lot of people said that one of the reasons of career pitfalls is that stability of job, right? So when you're on contract workers, you know that your contract is for 2 years, 3 years, and you need to renew it. Especially people who are working in, say, the marine engineering, those, they have all contracts, 6 months contract, 6 months off into then again they go into contract. So some countries, contract is the way of working. In the other countries, contract is to beat a system so that they can cut out the red tapeism. So it is more of the way that you employ resources, employ headcount. That is where the contract is. Okay. Some people feel that, by employing myself as a contract, I might lose some privileges, or I might lose. So when you discuss your contract with the people, or when you sign up for a contract, you got to make sure what are the things that you're getting in comparison with the people who are permanently employed. Fine. But what I see is that more and more of the functional jobs are getting more into a contract role. It's very, very rare that you find middle and the senior levels going on a contract. Okay. So there it is a different, there you have compensation giving you more of your stability as far as the job is concerned, right? They might give you, the ESOPs. Okay. You buy the stock of the company. So that gives you a lot of alignment for the loyalty. So that's where that goes.
Um, we don't have time for more than this one last question, unfortunately, and I want to apologize to everybody because we have so many questions in, but Prem has given you his contact information, and so I would urge you to reach out to him. But here's this last question from Rahul, and I think this would be a great way to illustrate coaching. He says, "Hi, Prem, can you please guide me with the relocation issue? So I'm getting good calls. I have upgraded myself where
Mhm.
I've been seeing myself getting good offers, but I'm unable to relocate to tier one cities because my partner's a government employee and her relocation opportunities aren't as good as mine, or as smooth as mine, rather. Also, they have a 3-year-old child and they all want to be under the same roof. So relocating without his partner and child is not a good choice. So what can you offer Rahul on that?"
Okay, Rahul, I don't want to be in your situation, firstly. Okay, so see, Rahul, you got to take a call on this. See, okay, I'll give you my own example. Fine, I'm married to a lieutenant colonel from the army. So we are married for about more than 20 years in the armed forces. So she is deployed somewhere. So my son grew up partly with her, partly with my parents. So that's we got to figure out a workaround for it. Fine. If both the carriers are important, you have to figure out a workaround. You got somebody to be there. So let's say you have to move to a relocated place, and if it's imperative that you go there, whereas your partner stays back wherever he or she is, you got to figure out a way that how can you be, unless if it is two different countries, then that's the people are even doing that. There are a lot of people who have gone to UAE and who are from Indian cities, and they come back only once in a year for about 2 or 3 months when they're allowed to come. Is that acceptable to you? Do you want to accept that and go and take the job? Is the question that not just you, your partner, your spouse, both of you have to sit together. It's a joint decision. Okay.
Mhm.
So that is something which is important. And you have to use the T scale for this. This is not a SWOT analysis one. This is more of a T scale one. What are the pros? What are the cons of you relocating, not relocating? Take out, score out what is not controllable, and then what can you control? How can you manage? Can you put a can somebody work with be at home? Can you come once in a while? How frequently can you tie up with your current employer so that they can allow you to travel for certain time? Can you operate on a hybrid model? Can you work for some time in part of a month here and then go back and be in the new location? These are things that you can negotiate, because certain part of your work you can do it from work from home. So this is how you got to go about it. Use your influence, and if there is anything that is not working for you, you got to give your company a way as to how you can work around that situation. It should be win-win for both. If it is a win-win for both, I'm sure there should be a workaround for it.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Prem. I'm going to go ahead and present the last part of the webinar to close out. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to thank everyone, and
Oh,
I wanted you also to get a chance to reiterate your reach outs.
yeah, fine.
So all of these are available. I will see for a second here if I can put them into the chat so that
Oh, that'd
people
be wonderful if you can put them into the chat. And if they can take a screenshot of this, you can reach out to me. I do help a lot of people in their career transition, people who are pivoting in their career. What are the options? How do they consider the options? How do they, how to explore it? And how do you base it on facts? How do you base it on clear metrics? That's what I insist on. That's what I help people on. And a lot of officers who are transiting from the uniform to the civis. I do help a lot of them. Please reach out to me on this one. I can be, irrespective of whichever part of the world you are, you can reach out to me on my website or on my phone or even on my email, premvas@prehanjay.com. Please reach out to me and we can surely work around how to, get the light at the end of the tunnel. Certainly we can do that. I must thank you. Thanks, Simplilearn. Thanks, Stuart, for helping us do this flawlessly. And we've been able to, I tried to keep this within 50 minutes. I hope I've done that. But since we had a lot of questions, and I'm sure you can always shoot those questions which we didn't answer. You can always shoot that to me in this, and also Stuart can help do that. Thank you so much once again, and have a splendid career. I hope that 5% who are not too good now, I hope they are not there. They are in the
yeah.
top, right? Okay.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
I just want to, as we're finishing up, I want to reiterate that we have a free program for upskilling. Um, this is a introductory level of some of our paid programs. So these are self-directed learning and allow you to learn from video content in many different skills, and then you earn um, certificates for these particular courses. And if you want to move forward, then you are able to look at our other more in-depth courses. So I'm going to put this into the chat as well to let you have the link. And finally, I'm going to mention that, by the way, I do want to reassure you that we will be sending out a link to the recording of this session, along with a link to the PDF of the presentation slides in an email that you'll receive tomorrow. And finally, I want to mention that we have another webinar coming up next week in the digital marketing domain. So if you're in that domain or interested in it, or if you have friends who are, please let them know about this session with Matt Bailey of SiteLogic Marketing, debunking SEO myths. SEO is search engine optimization, and he'll give you advice and information about how to avoid being distracted by wrong information in that area and focus on how to do it right. So that's next Wednesday, same time. And in the meanwhile, you can connect with us through our social media handles at Simplilearn on Facebook and Twitter, or Simplilearn on LinkedIn. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars, and we certainly look forward to having you join the Simplilearn learning community. And with that, I'll conclude our webinar. Thank you so much.